before long there was tears and there was Kleenex, and then she was leaning in, and then there was a hug, and then she was calling me mama. And then, she just was so desperate for a kind word at a tough time.
What does loving your neighbor actually look like? This is Journey with Care, where curious Canadians get inspired to love others well through real-life stories and honest conversations. What if I told you that a simple act of kindness could transform a life and ripple through an entire community? Today, we uncover the profound impact of intentional giving and community support. In many communities, the challenge lies in knowing how to give meaningfully, where to start, and ensuring that our help preserves dignity and fosters true connections. Today, Wendi is joined by our guest, Audra. Audra shares a powerful story of her use of the innovative care-sharing technology CarePortal to overcome some of these obstacles and make a meaningful connection that resulted in mutual transformation between her and a foreign student that found herself pregnant with no support. But before we dive into the interview, be sure to check out the Journey with Prayer podcast, a short devotional podcast to start off your week. Find it there in the show notes or on your podcast player, or go to careimpact.ca/podcast. Also, thank you for continuing to share the podcast and support us. This podcast and the work of Care Impact exists through generous donors like you. So if you wish to support or sponsor, head over to careimpact.ca/podcast. We'd love to have you journey alongside us. All right, get ready to be inspired and discover how you can shine as a ray of hope in a world longing for meaningful connection. Now on with the interview.
Welcome to the Journey with Care podcast. Today we have a special feature. With me in studio, I have Audra Hildebrand from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and we're here to share about what community connections look like. What does it look like to actually care for our communities, and introduce what some of you already know about the CarePortal, which is a care-sharing technology. And she's here to share her experience as a community responder here today. Welcome to the podcast, Audra.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and we're actually neighbors, so this is nice to just sit here on a nice rainy day in the Shasta, sipping tea together and just catching up. So I'm so glad that we get to share this with our audience.
This is a beautiful morning for a conversation.
It sure is. And you have a lot to converse about, and I'm particularly excited to share some of the things you have been doing in the community, and I think will bring inspiration to those that are listening. So Audra, you are active in Gateway Church, which is a church that has been participating, utilizing the CarePortal technology, which allows you to receive notifications when a need comes up in the community. You're a wife, you're a mother of 2 daughters, grown daughters, and you're a teacher, musician. There's so many things about you. And you have one of the warmest hearts that one could find in the community. You exude it. But can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Why do you care for others so much?
I was thinking about that last night, actually. Why do I care for others so much? And I realized it's because of some beautiful women of faith who have gone before me. So my great-grandmother was one of the first settlers in the Rosenart area. In fact, my great-grandfather cleared the land for the farmers. So they knew what it was like to be newcomers in a land and to start a new life. Her oldest daughter was my grandmother, and I remember my grandmother never went anywhere without something to give. Her hands were always ready to share. So, home-baked buns, pot of soup. She would quickly run and grab a bouquet of flowers from her garden, her huge garden. I remember she had a gift closet, a giving closet, and it was full of things that she could grab to give. And as a child seeing that, I noticed it. I was also the recipient of some of those gifts. Mm-hmm. One of her daughters is my mother, and my mother was the same. She's a caregiver. And so in our home growing up, it was always important to keep other people in mind, to share what we had because we are so blessed. So then it is our responsibility and our joy to bless others in turn. And it was a way of sharing and caring for the people around you because that makes life better. And so I realized I've really grown up with beautiful women of faith who have lived this way. And so I think it was just natural for me because it's been so modeled.
Yeah.
And I think investing in people is the best, most meaningful investment you could make.
Talk about a return of investments and ROI.
Yep.
Investing in people. And just like they invested in you and were a role model, interestingly enough, my grandma had a closet like that. My mom had that. And guess what? I have a box. I call it the magic box that has gifts ready to go. So it so resonates with me as well.
Okay, so you know what my husband and I do? We don't have a closet or a box, but we have an account.
Okay.
A designated bank account. It's called Giving. And it's not part of our regular life budget, monthly budget. But when we have extra money, we'll just throw it in there. And so when needs come up, when, someone's going through a hard time, we've got money to give. And that account is what we've used for CarePortal.
Oh, that is so cool. I didn't realize that. But there was some intentionality to it. So it wasn't enough to say, I care for others. You actually not only set a closet, you put a bank account. You said, you know what, this is for those times where needs come up.
Yep.
Not if you have change in your pocket at the moment.
No, we plan for it. And it's the windfall money, the stuff that you didn't really have designated anyway. So throw it in there to bless others because we are so blessed.
Yeah, but some could argue, say, well, I could have bought that shirt or those jeans or got that extra cup of coffee.
You could have.
It could have, but you've chosen to give that and put that aside. That is so cool. Yeah, in James 2:8, it says, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, it's like the two-part law, love God and love your neighbor. James 2:8 says, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. And there's something about doing what is right, not because law obliges that you better give. You're a Christian, so then I have to give. God loves a cheerful giver, right? And I see cheerfulness when you talk about giving, and I've seen it in action. It feels good to do what is right, what we are created to be, who we are created to be, and how God has wired us for community. And so when you tap into that, my goodness, that is so beautiful. So I love that you put intentionality to caring. But one of the things that I love also is that your church, Gateway Community, is intentional about caring too. Because I know all churches within their mission statements and values want to care. It's part of who we are. It's part of loving God with our whole self and loving our neighbor as ourselves. So simple, and yet sometimes so hard to actually implement in a busy life with so many programs, so many demands and constraints. Yet, how do we actually do that? But Gateway has been an example of putting some intentionality. And one of those ways is partnering with Care Impact. And you've been utilizing the CarePortal technology. And it really takes the guesswork out of compassion. You don't have to be guessing, should I do a hot dog stand? Or how do we reach our neighbors? Or if I give them a hamper, will they like a frozen turkey when they're a vegetarian family? We don't know, right? But can you tell me your experience and your church's experience in caring intentionally, utilizing the CarePortal technology?
So at our church, we have a point person who kind of makes sure that a few times a year the church hears about it, hears about these opportunities. We're invited to sign up so that we get emails and notifications in our inboxes. And when I first heard about it, when Walter and I first heard about it, we were like, well, of course, we're going to do that. Sounds awesome. And so we have the different notifications that come in our inboxes and we can respond to them. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But we have responded over the years in a few ways. Sometimes we've given money. Sometimes we have the item that is being requested, and so we give that item. And recently, we actually delivered an item. So we were the delivery people.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And there's just so many needs within all our communities. So whichever city you are listening from, there are needs hidden in plain sight, I like to say, that we just don't have access to. We don't know when a youth is aging out of care. We don't know when a family is in the process of reunification or when a university student is having a baby and all alone here in this country. We just don't know where people are in isolation or where their needs are most. Part of it's Privacy Acts. We can't know. And that protects vulnerable people. And part of it is just our society in general, where we become so individualistic, we aren't able to communicate those needs in a proper way. And CarePortal technology is allowing that. So we have many organizations here in Winnipeg. We have other organizations. We don't do the frontline stuff, but they do. So we've got child welfare, we have pregnancy center, we have a youth drop-in center, ministries. They know the needs because they're working with people day in and day out, and they're able to vet those needs of what would help them go forward. And they themselves, their clients, can identify what are the needs that would help them move forward. And they're able to put it into the portal. And your church is one of the recipients. And so along with a network of churches, that's what we call care sharing. It's all collective impact for those of you in community development. Some really good best practices now being able to be shared through technology. And so we're excited that you have been able to be part of that. It's new to Canada and you've been rocking it. I would love to talk about one particular situation that you responded to. You were the connector. You said, yes, I can help. And this is what the need read from the caseworker that you would have received in your inbox, along with hundreds of people across the city and from different churches. It said like this. The caseworker wrote, "My client is a lovely young woman, international student who came to Winnipeg almost a year ago to further her education. She's expecting a baby now in less than 2 weeks, but does not have the necessary baby items. Being a student, she doesn't have much, and she finds it hard to ask for help. She's been going through this pregnancy alone and will be a single parent. The priority item needed for baby is a car seat and a stroller combo. She is feeling the urgency of this need since having a car seat is a requirement before being allowed to leave the hospital with baby. Any help and support provided would be greatly appreciated." The caseworker from a local crisis center here in Winnipeg. Tell me what went through your mind when you read that and when you were invited into that story.
Oh, well, I think the way it came across my life was our point person at our church had been working on this, actioning this need, and had realized that the student actually lived like 2 blocks from my house. And so she actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, Audra, by the way, would you be open to getting involved? This person actually lives really close to you. Actually is your neighbor." And at that point, that was all I needed to hear. I didn't even need to hear her whole story or what was all happening. It's like, if I can meet and help someone who lives right here, like, absolutely, I'd be honored. It'd be awesome. And on top of that, you know, for years, we have hosted international students in our home. And so I have a big heart for newcomers to Canada, especially students. I know how hard they work. I know how much sacrifice goes into them making this dream of theirs come true. And I can't imagine showing up and then finding yourself pregnant and not knowing how things all work here. And, oh my goodness, I need a car seat, really? And what do I do? So yeah, absolutely. It was a no-brainer. And I just got excited that I could do something about it and hear about it. Like,
so I don't imagine, it's been a few years since baby days for you and Walter. I don't imagine you had that stroller and car seat sitting in your garage.
No.
How did that work out to be able to make a connection, bring that over without having that on hand?
Yeah, so I think this is the amazing power of a platform like CarePortal. So you can have this, you know, this caseworker that knows this person, knows the need, posts it, that gets shared to so many different inboxes. And then there was a person who said, "Oh, here's some money I want to give toward that." And then there was a person who said, "Oh, like, I can buy that. Oh, I found a great stroller car seat combo on Facebook Marketplace and I can buy it with that money." And so someone bought it. And then someone said, "Oh, could we bring it to your house?" And then that person, like, "Yeah, sure, I'll get it to church on Sunday." But all along the way, like, extra things got added. You know, it wasn't just a car seat and a stroller. There was like a pack of diapers. There was wipes. There was like a little toy. Then at some point, information came that, the student doesn't live alone. And so there was a little gift for the roommate. And there was, and in the end, it was like this whole care package. And so Walter and I showed up at church. It all got loaded in our car trunk. Everything had been gathered. We had a whole trunk full of stuff, actually. And then all that I had to do was literally take that trunk load of stuff, text the number I'd been given. So we were given the number for that student, and that had all been set up. So I just had to text her and say, hey, what afternoon works for you? What time works for you this afternoon? And we pulled up, and that's
the rest is history.
Yeah.
So that is exciting because it was a coordinated effort. The technology helped coordinate that compassion.
Yes.
With some intentionality, right? And boy, this didn't just become, let's do a stroller drive. This became
Right.
for a person. Confidentiality all upheld.
Yes.
This platform does keep confidentiality, but it suddenly became real because it's a real person having a baby in 2 weeks. My goodness. So there's a bit of urgency. And so there's a lot of grandmas and other moms and Walter, who, tell me about Walter. Is he the type that goes on stroller deliveries and collecting diapers?
So Walter would be the person who would say that he's not very compassionate. I think he's far more than he gives himself credit for. But, he said he'd be the person who would just walk by oblivious, like just not wired that way. And so he was happy to drive. I was happy for the extra moral support and the muscles to carry the things.
Yep.
And so for him, I could drive over there. Like, no, that was no big deal. And at one point, I think I even said, I'll just go. I'll be okay. And then he's like, well, no, I'm driving. So there's a part of him that actually really kind of did want to be a part of this story by then.
Well, I saw a glimpse of Walter because I happened to have one of the strollers. Somebody from one of the churches dropped it off here. We're close by. And so Walter came by and picked it up.
Right.
And the glow on his face is undeniable. He was in it. He's like,
I'm getting a stroller for the student.
And not in just a we're heroes cape kind of way at all, but in this enthusiasm that we get to be part of a story unfolding of this beautiful opportunity to connect with a neighbor, to bring these things, the love that was just poured into this care package, which is like a truckload full for this mom. Okay, so now take me to the door. When you came to the door, what were some of the rawness feelings, maybe mixed feelings that you were right before you knocked on that door?
Yeah, well, the reality of it is it's one thing to get excited about, I want to go drop this off. It's so easy. I mean, I just have to transport the stuff that's already been collected. So my piece was an easy piece. And yet there's that part there that now there's awkwardness because we don't really know each other at all. Like, I don't have any relationship with this complete stranger. She doesn't know me at all. There's a little bit of uncertainty, like, what kind of situation am I walking into? What kind of person is this? I mean, obviously she's not going to be sad about a truckload of gifts. So I'm not worried about that. But I don't know what her reaction is going to be. Like, is she going to be friendly? Is she going to want to talk? Is she going to, I don't know. So there's a lot of unknowns.
And I think that's good. I thank you for sharing that, because I think there's a lot of people, myself included, it's normal to have those feelings of trepidation. It's breaking into something new, meeting somebody new, whether you're extrovert or introvert.
Yeah.
There's this breaking down barriers. You have to step over that or break through it.
Yes, you do. And there's lots of times in life you need to do that, by the way. And it's one of the things that I'm always telling my students, take that risk. You're not going to grow if you don't take a risk. Get past the 10 seconds of awkwardness, because that's all it's going to be. Don't let the awkwardness of 10 seconds stop you from having that important conversation or stop you from doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it's that James 2:8 again. Love your neighbor as yourself. You are doing right. It is the right thing, and not all right things are the easy things. In fact, it's sometimes the things that challenge us, and we have to get over ourselves.
Get over yourself and just go do it.
Yeah.
And there's just so much blessing and joy in it, and that's that's where this life flows. It's life-giving. And so there we were. So we're at the door. She knew we were coming because I had texted. And so she met us at the door of her apartment building. And she was thrilled. First of all, she was relieved because she didn't know when the baby was going to come and she didn't have the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she needed to know she was going to be okay. So we brought it all up to her apartment for her. And, as we're going, we're just chit-chatting. We're getting to know each other a little bit. And she's quite forthcoming. I mean, she knows we know a bit of her story. And so she was sharing her anxiety and how happy she was that this was here. And then once we got to her apartment, I'm showing her all the extra stuff. And she was just thrilled. She didn't expect it, right? So there's extra things. And then I think it must have been, once we were in her space and once she saw all the extra love and she saw, Walter and our warm, friendly faces, it's like it did break the barriers. And she started to talk. And it was like she had held this in for so long. And here was finally a kind person who was willing to listen.
Yeah. And you weren't forcing that upon her.
Oh, no.
But connection changes everything. It's not about a delivery system. It's about making that connection with tangible ways of how do we support you. But you connected with her.
And it was also her choice. It was her initiative. She was the one that started sharing. But she started sharing, and I was just happy to listen. And, before long, there was tears, and there was Kleenex, and then she was leaning in, and then there was a hug, and then she was calling me mama. And then, she just was so desperate for a kind word at a tough time.
Yeah.
And, I would never have in a million years known, that was going on in that apartment 2 blocks over from my house. How would we? We don't.
Because you could see her apartment block from your kitchen window.
From my kitchen window, I can see her apartment block.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and it's transformative, those times when God steps in. Totally. Emmanuel, God with us. And right now with the Holy Spirit indwelling, you are bringing the presence of peace and hope in situations where she was feeling stressful. But it also did something for you too. What did God do in your heart in those moments when you were caring for others and that was the right thing, but how did God meet you in that moment through her?
I just felt giddy with excitement. This is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
It took half an hour of my day maybe? And I got to meet a neighbor and I got to make a difference. And there's life and there's it's so satisfying. And I was just so thrilled. And, when she started sharing and she's leaning in and we're hugging, I like what you just said. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I do think the Holy Spirit was there bringing healing and hope in that moment.
Mm.
We didn't say it that way. I mean, didn't communicate it that way. But at one point I looked at her and said, I'm from the church and God sees you. Mm-hmm. And I want you to know that God sees you and God loves you. And that's what these gifts are. That's as much as I said.
Yeah.
But in that moment, it's true. And so it felt like a holy moment. God was there.
Yeah.
I have no doubt it brought hope and healing to her. She had shared about how she, as an international student, she hadn't been well treated at the university by everyone she had met. Mm-hmm. And she really felt being a minority, being alone. And so she didn't even know who she could trust in a new country because it hadn't always gone well for her. So here was a beautiful time when it did go well. She did ask for help and it did go well. And God came and met her there. Whether she, recognizes as such or not, it was a beautiful moment. I actually was able to say, I texted her a couple of days later. Just said, so how are you doing? I really want to know when the baby comes. Please let me know when you have the baby because I want to celebrate with you. Mm-hmm. And so a number of weeks later, she did have the baby and I did get a text and I got a little photo of the little guy. Aww. And she actually invited me to come see her, another month after that. She invited me to come and visit baby because I, of course, said I would love to see it. So then I was able to go again. And this time I brought my own care package. I brought some diapers and I brought some food that I had cooked for supper.
Yeah.
Got some extra snacks for the roommate and the kids, And I was able to go by and cuddle the little one and give her, a little more hope. It was really neat.
And I love how the story unfolded. There's a huge piece of dignity that can't be underscored enough in how the agency entered the need in a dignifying way. Here's an intelligent, bright young woman, a courageous young woman. And you were able to honor her in those places of hardship, because we all go through hardship, right? It looks different for different people. But here we are able to be neighbor helping neighbor as equals together, journeying together. And it's no longer the project to being neighbors, journeying life together as equals. And when you give, it's the right thing to do. That seems to be underscored here in our conversation, like it talks about in James.
Right.
It also does good for the church. And the impact that we have been seeing on churches, yes, we want to help in actual needs as they're identified in intentional, informed ways. But what I see happen within the church body, those that dare to knock on the door, those that dare say, hey, I love shopping, or I can drive this, those who get involved, there's something that happens that's edifying because it is the right thing to do. What are some of those things that you maybe have seen just collectively within your church as you've seen people respond to the community?
At a very basic level, it allows us to not be so selfish and internal and inward looking. It's very easy to look after your family and your friends. It's very easy in a church to look after the church, be there for each other. But to be others focused as far as outward focused, we know that God has called us to do that, but that's not easy. So as a citizen living in the city I live in, I read the papers. I hear about the crime rates. I hear about the statistics. I know about what happened down the street and how police presence were there. And I live here. I see what's happening and I want to make a difference. I want my community to be a better place, but how do I do that? And I don't think you have to be a Christian to have that. We live where we live and we want to live in a safe place. We want to live in a community that cares. And so that's the big picture. How do we do that? Well, we do that through connection. We do that by engaging. We do that by getting involved. So from a church perspective, getting involved, pushing yourself to go to those places helps us to be more others oriented. It helps us to take us away from our inward self. Well, I'm just going to keep myself in my house and be safe in my house, and keep everyone away. And it allows us to engage and actually build that. It's like a peacemaking kind of thing. But it comes in little pieces, in many little pieces. One of the pieces is, CarePortal, and one of the pieces was my dropping off a stroller for a new mom. But bigger picture, bigger church picture, bigger community picture, it's engaging in your community in positive ways.
Because everyone can do something.
I think right down to it, we all want to do something. We all want our streets to be a happy place and not to be worried. That we want it to be safe and happy.
And that's the power of collective impact. And so these organizations that we work with, that we partner with, they're doing a great job and a hard job and an imperfect job. But they're in the places where the church also needs to be. And the church wants to be, but we just often don't know how. But the power of collective impact is that everybody can do something. And in our giftings, in the things that inspire us, it's a two-way street. Everybody wins when the community gets better. And I think that's beautiful because you've identified it rescues us from ourselves when we get over it. I noticed that actually through the pandemic, those that were responding to needs, and this is pandemic proof. We've seen it. So now social workers who were isolated in their homes, but in contact with their clients, but not physically there, could advocate those needs. They knew where they were living and where the needs were. And we could safely have churches respond to those needs and say, we see you, we hear you, you're not alone. And those that responded, night and day difference, they were rescued from themselves. Suddenly, the whole mask or no mask, the vax or no vax became secondary. They could have had an opinion, that's okay, but it never surfaced. We never dealt with it because people got over themselves and said, but there's a mom who is in isolation and we need to be there. There's a youth aging out. There's a family at the verge of breakdown, and we know how to support this family to say you're not alone. And I think that is just an encouragement to people, whether you have CarePortal in your city or not. The encouragement is this: reach out, work together. Nobody's got it all together. We need to work together.
Well, and all of those little steps, when we're all doing that, it makes a collective difference, right? And it can feel kind of useless by yourself. Oh, what good does that little thing that I do? But when you can work together, and when I think the beauty of CarePortal in particular is that it just allows those collective steps to come together, right? It just organizes it and collects it in a very intentional way that we can't do on our own. So that's absolutely beautiful. But in a small step, it's what connects the big picture to the actual reality. And I'm always looking for that, that teacher brain of mine, that faith brain of mine wants to take the big idea and wrestle it into reality. And this is just one beautiful way that can happen. When you do something like this, you can be touching poverty issues. You can be dealing with reconciliation. You could be dealing with, reducing crime. Really? Yeah. You can make a difference in these ways. Yeah, so little steps that make a big difference.
Well, you and I this morning, we've been sipping tea, and in the marketplace, they have systems set up that we didn't just wake up and say, how are we going to get these tea leaves over from China? All right. There's been systems and intentionality put in so that we could actually trace it down to the farmer if we really wanted to. But there were systems in place for collective impact so that I could reach into my shelf this morning in a groggy, rainy morning. I could reach in and just put it into the hot water and sip away.
Right.
But yet we don't know often where the actual need is we haven't created a how-to power to do so in so many ways. We just don't even know the needs across the street. And what I love about partnering with CarePortal is that now we have a way to really bring the hearts and the practicality to the people, to every person, whether it's a business that wants to contribute mattresses or it's another person in the community who is not even part of the church but loves their community. They can give a stroller.
Totally.
And where churches can actually put in their mission statement into action. That's what it's all about. If we can do it with tea leaves, couldn't we do it with loving our neighbor?
And it's worth it. So, get off your couch, buy one less cup of coffee a week so you have money to put in a giving account, whatever it takes. It's little steps, but it makes a big impact.
Right.
So I would just say, from my experience, from my wonderful women of faith who have modeled this for me in my life to my experiences, particularly with CarePortal, it's worth it. It's worth it to get engaged, get involved, get off the couch, give a little bit of money, give a little bit of time. It's a little bit from how richly blessed we are to reach out. And then plus the life it gives back, the spiritual impact that you get is something that it's hard to quantify, but investing out of love, investing in people out of love is always going to bring deep and meaningful blessing for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So if you give, you bless yourself.
Everyone's blessed when we give, right? Well, and the verse that comes to mind, and when there was a bunch of religious people around Jesus and they were shooing away the children, and Jesus said, "Let the children come to me and do not hinder." When you welcome a child, and you can fill in the blank for the vulnerable, for the one most in need, the ones that are often in the margins, when you welcome them in my name, you welcome me. And don't we want more of Jesus? It's not to be out of selfish ambition that we want to help so that we get more of Jesus. But as we give, it's the right thing to do. And we experience our faith in a real and new and powerful way. And I'd like to close off with 1 John 3:18. And I'm going to personalize it for us as Journey with Care family here. It says this: dear children, or dear listeners, dear sojourners, let us not love with words or speech, but with action and in truth. Audra, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, sharing your heart and caring for the community. What an inspiration. Are there any last words you'd like to leave our listeners?
I would just like to encourage, maybe inspire people by saying that sharing and caring makes a difference much bigger than we can quantify. So just do it. Just go do it. You won't be sorry.
Thank you for joining another conversation on Journey with Care, where we inspire curious Canadians on their path of faith and living life with purpose in community. Journey with Care is an initiative of Care Impact, a Canadian charity dedicated to connecting and equipping the whole church to journey well in community. You can visit their website at careimpact.ca or visit journeywithcare.ca to get more information on weekly episodes, Journey with Prayer, and details about our upcoming events and meetups. You can also leave us a message, share your thoughts, and connect with like-minded individuals who are on their own journeys of faith and purpose. Thank you for sharing this podcast and helping these stories reach the community. Together we can explore ways to journey in a good way. And always remember to stay curious.